Roller coaster enthusiasm. It's a funny old thing, but it has changed a lot over the last 20 years. And in this Your Experience Guide video, we're going to talk about it. So I'm Scott, this is Becca, this is Stephen. We've all been doing this for a long time, so yes, we are quite old. But it's coming up to 20 years since me and Stephen first went to a roller coaster enthusiast meetup at Blackpool Pleasure Beach with Coaster Force. So we're going to talk about just how it's changed in terms of being a roller coaster enthusiast, because when I joined forums, and I'm sure when you joined forums, it was very different to now. We didn't have things like YouTube, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Facebook, and we didn't have all of the sort of different groups coming together. It was all sort of, obviously it gets called a community a lot, and there's now it probably more of a community than it ever used to be. But back in the day, you'd have so many different sites where it was like lots of little communities in a big interest. So firstly, let's talk about your roller coaster enthusiast journey. How did you get into it, and why did you join forums, and what made you really want to be part of it?
Well, I guess it was towards when I left school. I got a car, and once I got a car, that gave me the freedom to start travelling. I'd always enjoyed watching roller coasters, but never really had been on them. I was very much a little bit scared to go on roller coasters. I admit that I was quite late to going on roller coasters. I think there's a little bit of peer pressure there as well to why I started doing them. I was with a few friends and they were like, "Oh, come on, go on this," and I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And then, they're like, "Oh, you come on, you'll be okay." And I did like the Grand National and Avalanche, which were probably they were my first big roller coasters essentially, and I loved them. And then after that, I was like, right, next time I'm going to do Big Dipper and all the other ones. And it wasn't long before I was on the big one platform at night, looking at the lifter. We had these chaser strobe going up to the top, and I was like, looking out the window, like, I don't know if I really want to do this. But once I had done it, I was like, you know what, I'm hooked. I really enjoy roller coasters. I love everything about roller coasters. I love going on them. I love watching them, and I love the technical side of them as well. So anything roller coaster, I just love it. So that's why I'm a part of the community.
Yeah, so for me, I always used to go to Blackpool with my mum and dad, like all the time. It like almost sometimes it'd be weekly, and sometimes you might think, what's changed? But yeah, I used to go almost weekly with my mum and dad, and it was more about going and seeing relatives, but we always used to kind of just go and meet them at the pleasure beach. And for me, I wasn't really into going on the rides. I actually enjoyed watching them more as a child, and I just found them fascinating. And I remember being there on like big ones opening day, and my dad going on it with my uncle, and just watching them go on things like the Wild Mouse, Big Dipper, Avalanche. And it was just, for me, it was exciting for someone else to go on them and me not to be scared, a bit like you on the Sky Coaster a few weeks ago. And it's just, I enjoyed watching them. And then I remember getting really interested in the technical side of it and the throughputs and all that because of Roller Coaster Tycoon and Loopy Landscapes, because Blackpool was on it. And it was always exciting being able to be in charge of the pleasure beach, and it made me sort of look at the layouts of the rides and go, I could go on that one, I could go on that one. And I remember sort of nagging my mum and dad about, can we go to the pleasure beach during my half-term week? And we went, and my brother came along as well. And I remember going on like roller coaster, as it was, Grand National, and I was like, I'm into this now. And then I went the following year for WOW weekends. It was a tenner. And I went with my mates on the train, and that was a £5. You tell this is a long time ago. Yeah.
You wouldn't get a train for £5 nowadays.
40 quid day out to Blackpool. It was fantastic. And my mum and dad were like, yeah, go for it. Nice cheap hobby that you like. So I did that. And it's not a cheap hobby now. But yeah, I remember going with my friends from school, and a bit like you go on one ride, don't you? And you think, oh, actually, I can go on something else. So I remember going on Big Dipper thinking, surely the big one's just like this, but bigger. It's like, it's just going to feel the same as you're going over the hills. You're not going to realise how high you are because you're facing forward. You're going up, down. You're not really looking at, oh, I'm really high. So I just went for it in the end. And like you, I went on the big one in the dark the first time. And once I was in the queue, I was like, I'd got no doubt about it. I was like, I'm doing this now. And I really couldn't wait to get home and tell my mum and dad about it. And I was like, I'm going to buy the on-ride photo. Camera wasn't working. And I still remember going into the middle room of where my mum and dad still live. And I was like, oh, Dad, I've finally gone on the Pepsi Max. And he was like, photo? I haven't got one. Don't believe you. I was like, oh, come on. But yeah, he believed it in the end, because we went about a week later. He was like, right, well, we're going on it then. So we went back and went on it. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And I'm sure for you, it's parents.
Yes, yeah. My dad mostly. Growing up in Scotland, we didn't exactly have much close by. So for us, it was the trips down to Blackpool. I mean, when we came down to Blackpool, we only went to the pleasure beach. Like, I didn't see any of Blackpool until about 2009, 2008, because we went, we drove from Edinburgh, got to the pleasure beach, stayed at the pleasure beach, drove home again. So, yeah, that was kind of the start of it. But then we went to Florida every few years as well, and seeing kind of Islands of Adventure come to be a thing and getting to see all those rides back then, it was just so interesting to see, well, actually, these things are everywhere.
Yeah.
What else have we got? So, yeah, I blame my dad because he was very insistent that, no, you are going to try these. So there was never this kind of opportunity to be scared of anything. It was just, we are doing it. And it's like, yeah, actually, these are pretty good.
Yeah. Is that how Andy made you go on the Sky Coaster, was it?
I guess so. I don't really know what happened. I felt a bit like Carl Pilkington, really. And Ricky Gervais just sniggering on the other side, like, you're going on this. You got no way out, really. You're going to have to go on it. And yeah, I'm never doing that again. That was I was proper stitched up with that one.
If you've not seen it, there'll be a card in the top of the screen. Please check it out. Stephen would be grateful if you did.
Yeah, everyone's saying, "Oh, we're really sorry for that guy." Who went on. And you know what? I'm sorry for myself. I should have just said no and not done it. It was awful. If you want to something that's going to absolutely terrify you, you know what? Go have a good time. Not for me.
It's just a big swing.
It's not just a bit. I've got a cord you have to pull.
Yeah, no, I'm usually the one pulling the bloody cord.
Well, I had to do it because Andy had the camera, and I was like, I don't really want to pull this because I know what's going to happen. But I also want to get down quick. So, quickest way down is to just do it. I've never had such a conflict in my life. I don't want to pull the cord, but I also want to get down.
At least everybody that's asking if you're okay now knows that you're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Here you are.
I'm still alive. I did have to sit down for an hour afterwards, though.
Yeah, he did.
You're bringing me drinks to consume.
Yeah, Pepsi. It was expensive, that. So how did you sort of get involved with what we're doing now, Becca, in terms of joining coaster forums and just being a part of it all? Was it anything that drew you to like the forums or the internet in general in terms of coaster stuff, or did you just kind of find your way on there?
I just kind of stumbled across some forums, and I did lurk for a long time because it was more just interesting, and I didn't feel as widely travelled as a lot of people, so I didn't feel like anything I had to say was relevant. And then there was one week where I was quite ill. I had a really bad chest infection, and all I had to do was basically browse the internet, because what else are you going to do? And I got quite annoyed by something I saw and decided, you know what, for a change, I'm actually going to go on now. I'm going to create an account, and I'm going to tell that guy he's an idiot. And so I did.
Well, the rest is history.
It was something to do with a log flume at Pleasure Beach. I can't remember what it was, but I just had to have my say.
So for me, it was a case of, I knew I was interested in it because of Roller Coaster Tycoon and because of going to the park, to Pleasure Beach. And the funny thing is, I went to Alton Towers on a school trip. First ever time I went to Alton Towers, 2001, in the summer. Everyone's like, yeah, you like Blackpool, you're going to love this place. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I could not get home quick enough. Couldn't wait to get back on the coach. I was like, get me back to Blackpool. And then the next time I went to Alton Towers, I enjoyed it more, and I realised I hated it so much because of how busy it was. Yeah. And even though they had good throughputs, and they still do to some extent, I was so used to Blackpool and the paper ride where if you wanted to go on a ride, you just got on it, and you didn't have to wait long. Whereas you go to Towers at that time, and it's like, it was 4 hours for Nemesis and 3 hours for Oblivion, and I was like, nah.
School trip day.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not waiting that for a roller coaster. I was like, no chance. So I didn't enjoy it. I hated it, and I thought maybe roller coaster sort of enthusiasm isn't a thing for me. I was just kind of, maybe I just like Blackpool. And then I remember sort of just keeping going Blackpool, went to Towers and Drayton Manor a few times. I started to get more into it. And then when Blackpool had the fire with the Grand National, I was like, I want to find out more about this because I really like the Grand National. Has that ride gone forever? So I was just Googling it. Coaster Force. What's this? Clicked on it, Coaster Force. Got all these geeks talking about roller coasters. I'm like, these are my kind of people. So I remember signing up to it and I had no idea about the ride that I've got on my jumper or anywhere else. So I just didn't think about all the roller coasters that are out there. I didn't know much about Florida or anything. And I'm there commenting about the big one. Oh, it's still one of the biggest rides in the world, isn't it? And I got absolutely slapped down in the comments. No, not even close to me. I was like, oh, sorry. So I remember just did my research. I was like, so what is out there? And fell into the roller coaster rabbit hole. I was finding POVs of rides nowhere near where I lived. I was like, I need to go and ride all these things. Join the forum. I'm getting involved with all these conversations. And then it comes up, Coaster Force Live. Oh, doing a meet-up in Blackpool in February. I think I might go to that. Just so happens that so did you.
Yeah, that was my first coaster meet as well.
Yeah.
Was the Coaster Force Live. It was the WoW weekend, so £10 to get in, I believe.
Yeah.
On that day. It was very cold.
Yeah, it
I remember
was.
it being very cold, but people travelled from all over the country to come to one park at the same time, and that was a new experience for me.
Yeah.
I think back then, I think I had just passed my test, or I was still on the train. I can't quite remember. Might have still been on the train at this point. So, Blackpool was like the only place I could get to by public transport, but it took like all day. The whole day was gone. It was like up at 3 in, and I'd be back at like just before midnight.
Yeah.
It's like the first train out and last train back in to have a day out in Blackpool for me. But I it was just amazing to see so many people who had the same kind of passion and excitement for roller coasters as I did, and the knowledge that people had as well about different rides. And I was young back then, and there was like so much to learn. I was fascinated what people have seen out there in the world. Like there were people on that meet who'd been on Top Thrill Dragster, and that was like the new big roller coaster at the time with King Dakar under construction. So it was just fascinating to see what their experience with like Top Thrill was compared to like the big one, which you could tell people have more travelled, and like we were very much like, the big one's the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
I think back then the PA still said it was the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world, when actually it hadn't been for quite some time.
No.
But yeah, it was just an amazing day. Even though the queues were massive, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
They actually they filled the park out. I remember the big one's queue was like right the way.
Well, it's when it had
back.
the old ticket boxes still, and
yeah.
then the big queuing pen outside it as well. We were basically queuing like all the way back to where your favourite sweet shop is next to Steeplechase.
Yeah, the big one sweets, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, but it went really quick because it was on 2 trains.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was back in the days when they were just chucking the trains out, and it was like, this is great. And then I remember we went on Bling for the first time. We were both terrified.
That was a peer pressure thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
really?
it was, 'cause
Everyone else, we didn't want to seem like wusses because everyone else
No.
had done all these big rides, and we were like, actually, don't know if I fancy that.
Yeah.
But we did it, and it
We
was
did
good. It was good.
I just remember being in the queue and people were like, oh yeah, what, you come here all the time, don't you? What do you think? Oh yeah, it's a great ride, Bling. It looks brilliant. And I'm there like absolutely bricking it. Me and you ended up sat together. It's like, God for that.
Yeah, that was a white knuckle experience.
Yeah, it
that
was,
one.
definitely. There was some going on, definitely, just without the fat chin, you see. But yeah, and over time, I know that me and you did a lot of those meetups, and then for me, I was part of a Blackpool Pleasure Beach website, which I'm not gonna name because it wasn't PBE, but I started to do meetups based on what Coaster Force were doing, because I was like, I want to bring that to sort of a different Pleasure Beach sort of community that I was part of. So we started doing them. We met more people that we still know now, Mike, namely, Stuz, and a few others. And then, of course, a few years later, Pleasure Beach Experience starts. So once Pleasure Beach Experience was born, it was basically a forum to start with, and then became Club Pleasure Beach. A few years later, the YouTube channel started. And for me, that's where I think we should sort of time travel from the 2000s onto more recent times with YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. So in your opinion, we'll go with you first, how do you think that roller coaster enthusiasm has changed as social media has changed? Because obviously we all used to live on forums, but now we live by YouTube, Twitter, Facebook,
Yeah,
other platforms.
I think it's changed a lot. Like when the forums were, I was a big part of the forums. I used to post quite a lot on the forums. Whereas I'll probably find nowadays I don't really say as much as I used to do. But maybe that's because, like, well, one, I kind of disappeared off the radar for 10 years because I got a job at Alton Towers, and their policy is no YouTuber or anything. You can't be a YouTuber, and you can't talk about the park and such. So I kind of went off the radar for quite a long time. I really enjoyed my time at Towers. I really, really enjoyed it. It was great to see the technical side of things. But like since coming back, when I left in 2021, the whole thing's completely changed. Like it's very much Facebook oriented. But like I think it's great. We've been friends all the way through.
Yeah.
So it was great to kind of see like the YouTube side of it. Obviously, if you see like some of the early videos I was in going back to that time, I was quite like, oh, I don't know if I fancy being on camera. I didn't really like to show my face. I was a bit like, oh no, I'm too shy. But it's actually, I think it's just changed. It allows me to kind of express my opinion of things and what I think of things. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things with being an enthusiast is not everyone is going to like the same ride.
Yes.
So, like for me, anything that Intamin build at the moment, I love. so like, but I know there's people out there who just don't like Intamin and they don't think that the rides are that good. But like for me, I think they're amazing. And then there are people who love Mack rides the best, but I don't think they're always that good. I do know they do build good rides, but
good save.
As a majority, they haven't been that great. I do need to do the new one at Europa. Voltron, that's the one. I need to get out there and give that a go. Actually, that looks really interesting and really fun. I need to get that one done. I do quite like the Big Dipper we did in Wallaby Holland as well. That was quite a good roller coaster. That was another surprise hit from them. So it's like any roller coaster can be good or bad depending on your experience with it. A lot of people don't like the big one. I love the big one. Now, is that because it was a big step for me on becoming a roller coaster enthusiast? It was a very iconic coaster at the time, being the biggest and tallest in the UK. And then I kind of got a soft spot for it. So I'm quite sympathetic towards it being a good roller coaster. I think that, if I was to actually rate it now, it probably wouldn't be anywhere, well, it probably wouldn't be in my top 10 compared to, but like it sits up there because it was a big thing for me personally. Like, so it's got like an emotional tie with myself.
Yes.
Like I've got a lot of memories. And I think it's always going to be a good roller coaster because of that. Because like whenever like we've been in the queue together, like, oh, do you remember that time when this happened or that happened? And and if time's gone by and you reminisce. So I think that that's a side of it as well when it comes to coasters. Now, one thing I would like to say has changed in the community a lot, which is quite shocking, is you hear these rumours that come out. So like back in the day, like, stuff would just happen, like roller coaster would go up and you're like, oh, there's a new roller coaster.
Yeah.
Whereas now, there's like no secrets anymore. Like, you hear like a ridiculous rumour like, oh, Six Flags are going to rip down King Dakar and take out half the park. And it's like, oh, that's really rubbish, that. And then it comes true. And the thing is, this is happening more and more regularly.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll be honest, it scares me a little bit how accurate some rumours are these days. Because you think, oh, that's ridiculous. And it just seems to happen.
I'll come back to that point shortly, because obviously as a YouTuber, I'm part of that problem. But I'll go to Becca first. And obviously you see a lot of what I do with YouTube.
Yes.
And obviously you see it all from a different point of view, because obviously you're there when I'm doing the event, organising at home as well.
Yeah.
So for you, how has being a roller coaster enthusiast changed, but how do you think the whole thing has changed? Because it has changed.
It has changed massively, and unfortunately I think it's changed for the worst, because back in the days of forums, you had topics and you just got involved in the topics that you were interested in, and it stayed on that topic. And if you had a bit of a fallout on that topic, fair enough, you moved on, you got on with the same people on another topic about another thing. And then when there was nothing going on, you spoke about other things. And people had more to talk about. There was times where there'd just be nothing going on in closed season. No one was about doing anything. So, we were talking about what games we were playing, what cars people liked. People were getting on about other things. There was still more to life than coasters. Whereas you go on to horrific places like Twitter and you're expected to live and breathe one coaster, one park, one manufacturer, and you have to back them to the death, or you're not a real enthusiast, and you're only allowed to know about coasters that opened in the last 3 years. You might see one person's post one time.
Yeah.
You disagree with them on that one post, and suddenly you're the bad guy. But they've never had any conversation with you about anything at all. But people just go, nope, we didn't agree on that one topic, on that one post that we both spent 30 seconds on, and that's it. It just creates such an awful atmosphere. Whereas in the old days, there'd be a topic about bread. And I'd be like, yeah, great, toast is fantastic. And we moved on.
Yeah.
It filled a gap for 2 minutes. It brought everyone together in a really weird but light-hearted, friendly way.
Yeah. The thing is, as well, is this is not just... The stuff you're talking about is not just a roller coaster thing, because obviously I've got an account where I follow the football.
Yeah.
And it's very much the same. It's like, obviously, I'm a Man United fan. They are my team, whereas there is now a thing where you've got Player FC, where people actually support the player and not the team. So if, let's say, Marcus Rashford at Manchester United scores a hat-trick, but Man United lose 5-3, they're still delighted, because their best player scored a hat-trick. Whereas me as a football team fan, I'm livid, I'm gutted my team's lost. So there is Twitter has created that where it's I think they call themselves Stan accounts, where it's I'm here dedicated for this ride, this footballer, this F1 person, and that is something that you lose by not having the forums being as active, is because one thing I will say is someone that used to be on forums every single night is I could have a massive argument with someone about something to do with Blackpool or Towers or whatever, but then the following day we could be talking about something completely different and in full agreement.
Yeah.
And you never know how much you actually agree with that person on so many different things, but there might be that one thing that you absolutely don't agree on. And it might be a football team, a ride, a theme park. There's a lot of people that I get on with really well that really like Efteling. I don't like Efteling because it's not for me, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be their friend anymore. And I think that is the issue that we have with Twitter, is that because you might see an account once, have a disagreement with them, you may never see that account again, but you might actually be missing so many things that you agree with that person on. And it is different on the forum because you just reply to them and, oh yeah, I agree with that, and then you have a chat about it, whereas the other issue with Twitter is the lack of characters, unless you pay for it.
The short text format really does cause a problem, because on a forum, you could go into a great deal of detail about, I didn't like it overall, but this was well done.
Yeah.
This was the bit I didn't like. This is what could be improved. Whereas on the short format, I didn't like that, and that's what people have got to go off, and that's what people have to reply on as well.
Yeah.
They don't get the space to have that conversation. It's very chopped up and horrible, and people don't think about what they're putting in.
Yeah.
So the first thing that comes to their mind is the post. Whereas in the past, the first thing that came to their mind was a title.
Yeah.
And then they had space to put their actual thought in.
Yeah. And that's kind of where, for me, YouTube has kind of taken over from the forum, because I can put the title and then I can make a video, whether it be 2 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour long, actually explaining my point. And I appreciate it. Not everyone's going to agree with me. And I get that, and I'm fine with that. And I think that sometimes, and I've made this mistake on Twitter before, is where you have a disagreement with someone and you think that, oh, that person doesn't like me. And they probably don't dislike you. It's just that you've had a bit of a fallout. But the problem is, you don't get enough characters to fully put your point across, and therefore you can look like you're being quite rude and abrupt.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes I'll tweet something or write something back to someone, and I'll be like, oh God, that looks awful. Delete it and rewrite it. And that's the thing I don't like about that platform, is I've probably come across as unpleasant in replies to people when I've really not meant to.
Yeah.
But I think that forums were great for that, because not great, because you could explain your point fully. And then at the end of it, you might be like, right, you don't agree with me, but I get where you're coming from, so we'll just leave it there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas on Twitter, because it's so condensed and you only get to say the important bit, and it might come across so badly.
Yeah.
But also, the elephant in the room is that obviously since about 2017, everybody has called roller coaster enthusiasm a community. It's not a term that I used to get. I never used to see that until Twitter was really a big thing. Now, for me, it is a bit of a yes and no question. Is it a community? Because yes, it is in some ways, but no, it isn't in others. And the way I say that is because it is a massive interest. There's people all over the world that are into it. But not everyone likes each other. That is, for anyone that's going into being a roller coaster enthusiast online, not everyone will like you, not everyone will agree with you, but that doesn't mean that we can't all be in the same space. But also, I feel like there's lots of little communities in a big interest, because my example would be the Roller Coaster Club of Great Britain. They're as old as me, that club, 1988. I think that's when they started. So they have got a very different audience to, say, our events with your experience guide. There's a different group of people, there's a different humour, there's different people from a different generation. I'm not saying that it's all people of a certain age, because a lot of younger people have started to join the RCCGB and the ECC, but certain people of a certain age, of a certain generation, of a certain way of life join different groups. Our group and Attraction Sources group are very similar. There's also a group called, I think it's Seek the Thrill, who've got they are from Denmark, I think, or they have got a very sort of similar age group to us, and they do a lot like we do. They go overseas and do lots of big events like our America event. They're a community within themselves, and they're a community within the roller coaster enthusiast side of things. But I think it's a difficult one in terms of, is it a big community or is it lots of little communities in a massive interest?
Yeah, I think the community thing is a bit of an awful way to put it, because it leaves people who don't have the energy or interest in being involved with everyone all of the time left on the side without a space.
Yeah.
For example, I don't have the interest or the energy to sit online and keep up with every single thing. Like, I just refuse to have anything to do with Twitter. It's a horrible place. But that leaves me not having a space in this so-called community. Like, unless you're actively a part of certain areas, you don't get included in that. Now, I'm perfectly happy not to be included in things, don't get me wrong. But I see a lot of people, especially at events, who they come along and say, I wasn't sure if I could come because I don't get accepted into the online communities. And that was never a problem in the past.
Yeah.
There wasn't this feeling of not being accepted. You could go on and have your say, and that was fine. You didn't need... Now there's this big thing about fitting in, and it's just such a awful feeling about it all, because you've got to fit into the community, or you get very visibly hushed out of the community. There's no place for people that, you know, maybe have more of an interest in some of it and more experience in some of it, been around longer, but you're saying that they're not part of it because they're not actively online every 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's a fair way of putting it. What do you think?
I don't have Twitter or anything like
No,
that.
You've made the right choice.
I'm a little bit old school. So like, I do have Facebook, so I do see quite a lot on Facebook, so I'll try and use that as like my gauging for this. I'll be honest, like most of the stuff I get through on my Facebook is quite positive, because I actually manually reject anything that is either disrespectful or negative. So the algorithm for me is quite positive overall, thankfully. I did have one point where I had to remake my account because it did start bringing lots of really negative stuff all the time. And I think that's really bad, because like when you're being fed like negative news, negative this, that, and the other, it does bring you down. And it was during a particularly harsh time of my life. So that's why I kind of pressed the reset button and started again. And I haven't had that problem since, thankfully. But overall, I just see like lots of positive stuff coming back about the roller coasters and stuff that's going on, and I really like it these days. Like, I quite like seeing. I don't actually post anything that much, but like I'll see like, oh, this is happening in Dollywood, and that just randomly pops up. Like that's something that never used to happen. You wouldn't have just stuff randomly come to you, which you do get now. So if there's like some big news, it's likely that the algorithm will be like, oh well, Steve likes roller coasters, and this is getting a lot of hits, so we'll chuck that to him.
Yeah.
That never used to be a thing. Like, you could have a really good bit of big news going on, and there's a chance in the UK we wouldn't know about it.
Yeah.
Like, there's like this big roller coaster going up, and it'll be open before we heard anything about it. And like, oh right, we need to try and get on that. It looks cool. So I think like there are positives, there are negatives. Like I do quite like the meetups that you run. I've attended a few of those now. I do think that if you are a little bit shy about going to a meetup or an event, like I'd probably recommend giving it a go, because I know when we did it, I think it's harder now though, because we actually talked on the forum first
And then MSN Messenger.
before going to the meetup,
Yeah.
whereas that's not really a thing now, is
No,
it?
it
So, like I do appreciate it is a little bit harder, but I do. If you can get the confidence to go, you will meet lots of really cool people and people who will, have the time for you and hopefully accept you in and talk about roller coasters, and probably going to learn something about roller coasters as well. If you talk to me, I'm going to waffle on about control systems all day. That's my job now as well, doing control systems. I love control systems and roller coaster control systems.
And trains.
Trains, cable cars, and transportation in general. Not so much buses though. But like, if it's on rails or a ropeway, I'm quite interested in it. So, but like, I just, I know the first time we met, obviously I was a little bit nervous because it was a big event and I'd never really knew anyone apart from yourself and a couple of others.
Yeah.
It was a little bit scary, but I'm so glad I did it, because it
same.
formed a 20-year-long friendship. So
Absolutely.
and that's what's going to happen if you do, just get a little bit of confidence and get out there. Because I lived in a context in a very isolated town in a Lake District. Not an isolated town, isolated hamlet. It was 4 houses in the middle of nowhere, essentially. So it was going to Blackpool was quite different for me, compared to where I normally am. So it was out of my comfort zone. But I'm so glad I did it. And, I'm so glad that I've made so many friends and done so many roller coasters. And, I'm going to have them memories for life.
Yeah.
So, I think overall it's a good thing.
I think what helped us definitely was MSN Messenger.
Definitely.
Because obviously we were chatting away on Coaster Forces forum, then me, you and Patrick, who obviously we've not seen for years, because I think he now works within the industry. But we were chatting as a free on MSN Messenger for weeks, and like, what time are you getting to Preston? I'm getting there from Crewe at this time, or you were travelling from obviously Cumbria, and it was like, we're all going to get to Preston or Blackpool North or South at this time. And what I do remember is us all charging back to Blackpool North because we'd overstayed our time at Pleasure Beach, and we're like, we're all going to miss our train here. And we were there trying to chat about how good the day had been, but at the same time we were like charging along Blackpool seafront as 16, 17-year-olds. Like, this is a terrifying experience. I'm not in my own town and I'm charging through another town trying to get a train home, knowing that if I don't get there on time, I'm probably never going to be able to do this again. So it was like, I'm going to have to get home and get this sorted. But I'm so glad I did it, because I was a shy person, and I still can be a shy person, and it helped me just sort of be like, right, there is people that are roller coaster geeks like me. So I have now got some people to talk to about this rather than just boring my parents with it. And it was probably great for them as well that I didn't like bully them about Blackpool every week. Can we go Blackpool again? It was like, I've actually got people to go with now. And the school friends who were constantly sick of hearing about Blackpool Pleasure Beach probably thought, thank God for that, he's only talking about football to us now. And so I think in general it just helped me a lot in terms of actually being a bit more confident, and I'm still shy at times, but it just helped me a lot. So would you say you're glad you did it? Yeah, good. I hope so. Excellent. I just think it's mad how much it's changed, because obviously when I joined Coaster Force, I didn't think that all this would happen. I didn't think that 20 years on I'd be sat in front of cameras talking about roller coasters for a living and just doing it all the time every week. It's like, I thought I was doing people's heads in talking about roller coasters, and now I could just do it all the time, and it's great. And that's why not only do I obviously appreciate where I've come from with it, but I also appreciate everyone that watches Your Experience Guide and PBE back in the day, because it gives us a platform to talk about roller coasters. And whilst we accept that our opinions might not always, be the same, we still do this because we enjoy doing it as well. And not only that, it's nice to get everyone else's opinions as well. And I'll sometimes be sat at home and get an idea for a video and be like, recording that tomorrow. I'm just going to waffle some shite about a roller coaster and see what people think about it. And then you get the comments coming in, and so many people have got their own experiences. And it's just great that we do have that sort of community-spirited feel to it. And I do feel like there is a community out there, but I feel like it's, like I've said before, it's little communities in a big interest, definitely. Yeah. And I don't think like you need to have been on 1,000 coasters to be part of it. I don't feel like you need to have been to countries all over the world to be part of it. Everyone has got their own place in it somewhere, and I do think that with the loss of forums, or I know there's still forums out there, but with the loss of how intense forums were, it's not quite the same in terms of everyone feeling like they're part of it.
Yeah, I think what it is we've gone from nice conversations to a shouting match.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like from my perspective anyway. It's gone from very much having the conversation, kind of people with more experience advising people with less experience. People were more interested to ask people that had more experience, well, I've been on this, I'm going to go on this, or I'd like to go on this, how do they compare?
Yeah.
And there'd be more of that kind of conversation, whereas now it's just I've been on this, it's the best thing in the world. There's the respect disappeared along the way at some point. I'm not sure when, but it just feels a lot of just me, rather than that two-way conversation. A lot of people post now just to put their opinion out there. They don't post expecting the two-way.
No, and the thing is, I think as well, it doesn't matter how many coasters you've been on.
No.
Because, like, for example, and I'm not gloating, I've been on a lot more coasters than Stephen, but Stephen knows a lot more about coasters than I do, because he's built things that work on coasters. You've built trains, you've worked on track, you've operated them a lot more than I ever did. So whilst my coaster count might be higher, it doesn't mean I'm more knowledgeable, because on that coaster count there is some absolute shite that you'll look at and go, I'm not doing that. Whereas I kind of just did it for the sake of it, because it was like box tick, and then I got to the point where I went, actually, is it really worth doing that? No, it isn't. I'd rather just go back to doing the parks I like. And then when I go to new places, I don't always need to go on every coaster, or don't need to go on every ride. Whereas for me, I'm not bothered about flat rides unless it's an Intamin gyro swing or a drop tower. Generally speaking, I'm not a flat ride person. They're not my favourite thing. I can take or leave them. I know they're really important to a lot of people, and obviously towers always get abused for not having more of them. But for me, I'm like, whatever. Give me more coasters, give me more dark rides and water rides, and I'm happy. So, yeah. But how do you see it going from here?
I think that Becca made a really good point about how everything seems to be like one-sided, and I suppose in a way it's a bit like what we're doing now. We're talking to people watching us.
Yeah.
That, like, I know they can put in the comment box, but it's not like we're actually having an active conversation like on the forums. And I think this is the way it's kind of going.
Yeah.
I just think, like, you know, I think the meetups and the actual meeting up in person is going to become more and more important to kind of counteract that. So, like, say, if you're, like, on these, or watching this video, or, you know, want to be a part of the community, try and get yourself a member of one of the clubs or one of the events and meet some people, because I think you'll find it quite good. Because I know it can seem a little bit intimidating when people put in their, like you say, oh, this is the best coaster in the world, and you know what, I've got opinions, I've got my favourite roller coasters in the world, but like in real life, people are a lot more accepting of, like, so when I'm there, like, oh, Velocicoaster is the best roller coaster in the world, and someone comes to me and says, oh, I actually think Oranguaz is the best roller coaster in the world, and you're like, you know what, yeah, I'll take that. You know, and then it starts a conversation about like the differences between like the Intamin and the RMCs, and, you know, and it's all positive, and, you know, people share their knowledge, and then sometimes you can take something away from that as well and realise something you didn't maybe know before. So yeah, I think overall it's hopefully going to go in a positive way. I do think that the Facebook, and like I said, from what you said about Twitter, I don't think it's something I particularly want to be a part of.
I wouldn't bother.
But I do think that try and keep away from that negativity just for your own mental health. If there's if you're getting that, like, do take a step back from those platforms if it's getting overwhelming. That's a bit of advice to you guys. But yeah, overall, I think like the meetups and actually in person, I prefer that way more than any of the online stuff.
Yeah.
And like I say, I quite enjoyed the travels with you doing these videos, because I like going to different places and seeing different theme parks and you've taken me to some places I wouldn't have, like, to be fair. When we went to Holland and did the Wallaby Holland, and I was like, oh, there's nothing here that's any good.
Yeah.
And I actually had a really good day. So, you know, sometimes having someone like this guy taking me around can be a good thing. The Sky Coasters, not a good thing.
It's all right. I thought you were going to talk about that hotel and restaurant that me, you, Andy, and Mark went to.
What, the Plague?
Yeah, you can call it that if you want.
Well, that's what it was. Over the door.
The food was so bad that your dad was on about issuing them with a civil notice of why he wasn't going to pay, because basically his food was alive, I think was his term. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And whenever we go on a trip now, like when we were doing the trip to Europe last May, Stephen's first thing was, I'll come on this trip, but I'm not staying at the Plague or anywhere like the Plague. But the issue is, right, it was a really small room. I remember checking in, I put my stuff down, and bearing in mind I've got all my camera equipment. I realised there's a door at the back of the room. It doesn't open from inside my room, but it opens from outside. So I walked around and checked it, and it opened. And I was like, so I went to reception. She said, have you got a key for that door? Oh no, it just stays open. I was like, what? So they're like, laptop, GoPro, vlogging camera, Sony A6 400, and I'm like, I think I'd rather keep them in the car. It's the first and only time I've ever left all of my equipment in the car because it felt safer in the car than the room. And that included when I was in the room, because we were literally right next to the border, weren't we, for France, to basically get on the Eurotunnel to come home. And it was like, yeah, I don't like this. I think we left early, didn't we?
Yeah, I think it was Holiday Inn, wasn't it, last time we went to?
Yeah, that was
much
great.
Better experience.
Yeah, I was a little bit like underdressed for that one. I walked into reception and went, oh, don't belong in here. I'm too much for
It
chav.
was only a Holiday Inn, and it was like, it was proper, like, yeah, that was a good one, that.
Yeah, it was a bit posh.
Good value.
Yeah, before we finish, I'm going to go back to a point you were making about the rumours and nothing's a surprise. I spoke to you about this yesterday before we planned this video out. And the problem is, like, your camera's just died.
You'll be all right just with that.
Yeah, I know. I just think it's quite funny. We always get a ding or something in here.
Yeah.
Last time it was the doorbell. But yeah, the thing is that nothing is a surprise anymore, because people like myself and Coaster Studios, Theme Park Worldwide, Coaster Crazy, all the YouTube channels that are out there, we all have contacts who work somewhere in the industry, whether it be a park, a consultancy, a supplier, somewhere in the industry, we all have a contact who will know what's going on. And sometimes they'll be like, I know this ride's being removed, the park are not going to announce it, can you do a rumour video about it? And sometimes it's like, how sure are you about it? And we have had our fingers burnt with stuff before. I remember the Valhalla one very clearly, where there was a rumour out there that Valhalla was going to close for the refurb. Someone rang me, said to me, that is absolutely not happening. We can't come out and publicly say that this isn't happening. Can you go and say that it's not happening? So I quite happily did it. We were Club Pleasure Beach. We worked with Pleasure Beach. I trusted the person that no longer works at Pleasure Beach, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I looked like a dick, because a week later it was announced, closed. Yeah. And I was like, thanks. You've probably killed all of our credibility there. Fortunately, there was other stuff that I'd been talking about did happen. Big One retracts, for example, and things like that. But it was annoying because we'd built up like a good credibility, I think, with the Icon construction, because everything that we said was going to happen, happened. Everything that we said was going to happen with, in terms of where the entrance was going to go, where the exit was going to go, how many trains it was going to run on, all that stuff, we got it spot on. But that was just took things completely the other way, and I was gutted at the time, which is why now I'm always really cautious about saying, oh, that'll definitely not happen, or this will definitely happen. But if there's a rumour out there and someone keeps coming to me and saying, can you do a video about this, we want to see what the reaction is or whatever, I'll do it. But I have had a chat with parks about this, and I do say to them that I will never just do it like willy-nilly to try and make things difficult for them. If I see a rumour that I think is going to cause trouble, I won't go anywhere near it, definitely. Like, for example, if we'd have known that Wild Mouse was going when it did, we'd have probably gone and filmed it and got the update. But we genuinely didn't know about that, and I don't think anybody did.
No.
But
it was quite sudden, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It's a shame. I
it
think
was.
a lot of people would like to go last ride on that one, but
Don't you start.
you know, well, no, I know it is a shame that it's gone, but you know,
But
these
yeah,
things happen. It's progress. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it became the hub. You gotta
Are
take
we
that out.
sure that's progress?
I am definitely leaving that in, mate.
No,
I
hopefully.
get your point about progress, but that was maybe not the example
Yeah,
to use.
I'm still waiting for something to go in, so hopefully they're going to get something good soon. So
Yeah.
they are due a new ride, so hopefully, fingers crossed, something soon.
Something will happen soon, I'm sure of it. There's obviously
Yeah.
lots going on with the Grand Prix area and talk of at the time of filming, we don't know, the Bolodrome might be gone.
Yeah, I know one of the things was that there's not enough space. So space is now forming all around the park. So
Well, yeah.
hopefully we're going to see something come in.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I think we can leave it there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, no regrets about being part of the roller coaster enthusiast communities, I'm going to say. Absolutely no regrets. You can't get everything right as vloggers. We do get things wrong. Also, sometimes you'll put out an argument on there that maybe you regret getting involved with. But at the end of the day, overall, I don't regret being part of it. It's been fantastic. So anything else you want to say?
I'm just very glad I got involved at the time I did, because if things were like they are now back then, I'd never have got involved.
Same, actually. Same, to be honest.
Which would have been a bit of a disaster, because we wouldn't be married.
No.
God knows where I'd have ended up after that. What would I have done with my time? Crikey. But, I am very glad I joined when I did,
Yeah,
because I wouldn't have bothered with how
No.
it is now.
No, it was... I go back to the point that I made the other day when I was talking about this online but not publicly. Years ago, you could have a massive row with someone on Coaster Force, PBE, Towers Times, anywhere. You could have a massive argument with them. You could see them the following day in the theme park and you'd probably shake their hand, go and get a drink together or go on a ride together. Whereas that doesn't happen a lot now. There's a lot more sort of, if you've fallen out with someone, people feel like they can never talk again.
Yeah.
And for me, that's not the case. I think that but that's where the problem, again, I go back to it with Twitter and the characters, and I feel like if you could have a proper debate, you just get it all out of your system and then it's dealt with and then everyone just moves on and does their own thing. Not everyone will be friends, not everyone will like each other,
No.
but I think that everyone has to respect each other's opinions and just work from there, really.
Yeah.
Definitely. Right. All good?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I'm not as involved in Twitter or that, so it doesn't really apply to me, but I'm very much old school still, so,
Yeah.
I'd like to go and do theme parks in person.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, the new part of it is obviously doing this,
Yeah.
I'm doing now, and that's quite fun as well, so.
And I'm sure you've seen many people say that you do it well, so...
Yeah, I was surprised actually how many people say, "Oh, we really like Steve," and that's a really nice thing to say. I like seeing the positivity there. So it's nice to give you that bit of enthusiasm to keep helping my friend Scott. So
Excellent.
thank you.
So we'll end it there. Please let us know if you're part of the roller coaster enthusiast communities. Let us know in the comments below. Are you part of any coaster clubs? What your experience of being a roller coaster enthusiast for however long you've been doing it? And just remember, it doesn't matter what your coaster count is. We can all enjoy coasters the same. So many thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next Your Experience Guide video.